You see, that first magic trick is not numbered with the rest of the magic tricks, quote unquote, that God did to the Egyptians. I mean, to God, these are not magic tricks. They're not illusory. They do have real bite. No pun intended for the biting insects that are coming up. And here are some things to consider about these plagues. First, they come as a result of God's people being oppressed before the wilderness experience. Keep that timing in mind. They come before going into the wilderness, which is to say, in the first half of the tribulation. And most scholars agree that these 10 plagues probably took only a few months to complete, maybe 6 to 10 months, so less than a year. Now, there are some differences between these plagues and the events in the book of Revelation, but these plagues and those things that happen in Revelation are very similar, and we're going to go through these, and then I'm going to talk about the differences, and maybe we can figure out some more things about this. The first plague was turning water to blood. The second one was frogs. Now, notice in the scriptures in chapter 8, that's where we are, notice that the magicians imitated and produced the same effects of turning water to blood and making the frogs swarm the land. After this, the magicians are no longer able to imitate what the Lord does. And then plague number 3 was gnats or lice. And then we're going to go and look at chapter 8, verse 19. And it says, "Then the magician said to Pharaoh, 'This is the finger of God.' But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them as the Lord had said." So they do know who this God is. They recognized his finger, and Pharaoh also would have recognized this finger. Now, just imagine for them, they were getting just God's finger. They were not getting his whole stretched out arm yet. In Ezekiel 20, verse 34, it says, "I will bring you out from the peoples, and gather you out of the countries where you're scattered with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and with wrath poured out." And Jeremiah says of the first Exodus in Jeremiah 32, verse 21, "You brought your people Israel out of the land of Egypt with signs and wonders, and with a strong hand and outstretched arm, and with great terror." Now, yes, they were in terror. Those Egyptians were in terror, and the children of Israel experienced terror too. But this time, the earth is going to experience more than terror. They're going to experience wrath. They didn't experience wrath. I guess in a way you could say that, the plagues brought the wrath of God. But the Bible doesn't refer to those plagues as wrath. It refers to them as terror in Jeremiah 32:21. So the Lord has shown wrath before, yes, but it was short-lived and contained within a small area, always. But let me show you what I mean about the difference between terror and wrath. Here is a comparison of the events in Egypt. In the 10 plagues, they're described in Exodus. In Revelation, there are 21 plagues. So you have 10 plagues and you have 21 plagues. The area of land covered where the terror was is the land of Egypt. It was all contained in Egypt. At the end, the area covered is going to be the entire world. And judgment was upon a stubborn ruler in Egypt who refused to obey God. But this time, judgment will be upon the entire world who refuses to believe and honor the living God. So, the Israelites saw God's outstretched arm too, but not until they were leaving and Pharaoh was chasing them. Now we're going to see his outstretched arm delivering punishments to the earth from the start of the tribulation, not his finger. And then, just like the Israelites who finally got to see God's outstretched arm when he was delivering them crossing the Red Sea, we're not going to see his outstretched arm, because we're already going to have seen the outstretched arm delivering the wrath, not just the terror, but the wrath with his outstretched arm. So when he comes back, we're going to see him in his full physical body, not just his arm, when it's time for us to be delivered. So can you see the comparison of magnitude from the first Exodus to the second Exodus? The one with the terror, the one with the wrath, the one with the finger of God delivering the plagues in Egypt compared to the outstretched arm that delivers the plagues in the tribulation. The outstretched arm of God delivering the children of Israel across the Red Sea compared to the actual appearance of God himself to deliver his children. See, there's a big difference between somebody's arm and their body. You see how things have gotten ramped up in the tribulation in a way that they were not in the first Exodus? Now, I have a question for you. Starting with number 4 of the plagues, the flies, who's in charge? Was it God or was it Pharaoh? I submit to you that it was God who was in charge of Egypt at that point. Pharaoh had given up his right to rule. He had given up his position, his authority, everything, starting with plague number 4, the flies. And then we have diseased livestock, and then we have boils, and then we have thunder and hail, that's number 7. And then there is locusts and darkness. And then we have number 10, the death of the firstborn. Now, Monte Judah teaches that these plagues in Egypt are actually sets of 3, then one final judgment that follows. And it's interesting that the book of Revelation is set up kind of the same way. We have 3 sets of punishments. They're called plagues, trumpets, and vials. Now, these add up to 21 tribulation events, not 10 as it was for the Egyptians. I want to review something else about these plagues because it's something that is not often taught, but each of these plagues may also be viewed as a direct attack on the Egyptian gods. So, for instance, turning the water into blood, that was an attack on Hapi, the god of the Nile. Now, you know that I have said that Pharaoh believed he was the god of the Nile, right? So this first plague was an attack on Hapi, the god of the Nile, and it was an attack on Pharaoh. And then the frogs were an attack on Het, the Egyptian goddess of frogs. And interestingly enough, the goddess of frogs said that many frogs was a good thing. It meant, fertile land and all of that stuff. Well, of course, now we have so many frogs that it means death. I don't like to see frogs sitting around on people's porches, those little frog statues, 'cause that's what the goddess Het had. They had little frogs. Now, the lice, that was Kepler, god of the beetles and flies that was attacked. And then the flies was again Kepler. And then the livestock disease was Apis, the sacred bull, that was attacked. And then the boils were Imhotep, the physician god, and Thoth, the magic and healing god. And that's who was attacked when they got the boils. And then in the hail, Nut, the sky goddess, was attacked. And then when the locusts came, it was Set, the god of crops. And then when there was darkness, the sun god Ra was attacked. And then we come to the death of the firstborn, which is yet another attack on Pharaoh, because Pharaoh called himself God. Well, that's it for this Torah portion, Va'era. I hope that I have presented you with some new information, things that you can think about, kind of mull around a little bit, and even go and study for yourself. Go online and do the homework, read the scriptures. And until next week, Shabbat Shalom.